They might not be correct. They could be correct. I just don't know. I think given the information that's out there, the reasonable thing to say about the numbers from China is we just have no idea if they're accurate. We don't know if they're accurate in terms of amount, and we don't know if they're accurate in terms of trend. Just don't know. So I'll be looking to see what China does in addition to any kind of numbers that come out. So that's what I want to say about the numbers. It's unfortunately we just don't have a lot of information about what's going on. We don't know if the death toll is correct. No idea. There's all kinds of reports of people who've died and had symptoms of this, and then their body wasn't recorded. You can find story after story of this in different media outlets. People who die and they have the symptoms, and then they never get tested for it, and they're not, and their body's cremated, and they're not recorded as a death. So, are the right number of deaths being reported? Beats me. No idea. No idea at all. So, anyways. We'll just have to look at the numbers, but at a certain point, you just don't know if the numbers are accurate or not. That's where we're at. Okay, so we're going to be updating you on what's going on and updating you on the latest cases, and we have a bunch of new cases to report on since we were last on the air, and we're going to be taking your comments and questions as well. Hey, thanks for your support, by the way. Thanks. Kevin Campbell for your support. Thank you, Kevin, and thanks for thanking the mods. Thank you, Paula McLennan, and thank you, Lil Bean, for your support. Lil Bean says, I'm just wondering if this is airborne. So look, let me just say this about the whole airborne thing. I get a lot of comments. I read a lot of comments. I get a lot of comments. I see it on social media about people talking about it being airborne, about people talking about being aerosolized. The problem with all of this commentary is I feel like there's not a clear definition of what it means to be airborne, and there's not a clear definition of what it means to be aerosolized. There was a report coming out yesterday that China said this disease was aerosolized, and I actually read a thread last night where scientists were saying, well, we're not exactly sure what they mean by that. So, I think when you're discussing this and you're talking about airborne or aerosolized, it's really important to get clear on what you mean by this, because if it's not clear, and it's important for everybody to use these terms the same way, because I feel like what's happened is what one person means by airborne isn't what somebody else means by airborne, and then people are just talking past each other. So what I can tell you is this. The scientific consensus is that this is spread definitely by people coughing and sneezing and other people breathing that in. That's a consensus. CDC says it. So if your definition of airborne includes can be spread by coughing and sneezing, yeah, that seems to be the case. To what degree it can be spread by virus particles getting on a surface and sitting there, and then somebody touches the surface, and then maybe they touch their nose or their mouth or their eyes. Possible. It's just not clear. It's not clear. So that's really what we know. There's different reports that come out at some time or another, but we just don't know. So, I would be careful with the terminology, because you can see an article that it says it's airborne or it's aerosolized, and then it comes from one source, and it's not even clear what they mean by it. So, right now, I mean, if you want to know about how it's spread and what scientists know, a good place to check is there's a Q&A on the CDC page about this. Here. How does the virus spread? CDC. How does the virus spread? The virus probably emerged from an animal source, but now seems to be spreading from person to person. At this time, it's unclear how easily or sustainably this virus is spreading between people. And they actually have something here. How it spreads. Much is unknown about how it spreads. Current knowledge is largely based on what is known about similar coronaviruses. Most often, coronaviruses spread from person to person. Happens among close contacts about 6 feet. That's most often spread with coronaviruses happens from person to person happens among close contacts about 6 feet. Person-to-person spread is thought to occur mainly via respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs or sneezes, similar to how influenza and other respiratory pathogens spread. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby and possibly be inhaled into the lungs. It's currently unclear if a person can get the virus by touching a surface or object that has the virus on it and then touching their own mouth, nose, or possibly their own eyes. So, we just don't know. And, some once in a while, you'll hear China say something in a press conference or you'll see a story somewhere, but we just don't know. And it's not like there's lots of world scientists running around in China with great access to their data. So until I hear compelling evidence otherwise, I'm going with what the CD says. Coughing and sneezing, close contacts, unclear if you can get it by touching a surface where virus particles are. There's also some question as to whether it might be, spread through feces or diarrhea, that kind of thing, possibly. But again, it looks like for most people, respiratory droplets produced when a person coughs or sneezes. So that's about spreading. Okay, let's talk about some of the new cases. And again, we have about 1 hour until the new official number from Hubei province. Who knows if those numbers are remotely correct? I just don't even know what to think anymore about the official numbers. So let's go to, I want to show you this. One thing I have noticed a bunch in the last few days is we're hearing more and more about large case clusters outside of China. We're hearing more and more about, multiple people getting it from a similar source or in a similar area, than we did before from various countries. So, for example, here's just another one. 9 members of same family confirmed with disease in Hong Kong after sharing hot pot and barbecue meal. 9 members of the same family got it in Hong Kong. 9 of 10 new cases on Sunday had been to a family gathering January 19th at the Lento Party Room in Kwantong. Health authorities warn of major difficulties in tracing possible virus carriers because some might only show mild flu-like symptoms at every stage. So we keep seeing things like this, where multiple people get it, and it looks like from a related cause. 9 members of same family. This is from South China Morning Post. So they say 9 members of the same Hong Kong family have been infected by the deadly new coronavirus after sharing a hot pot and barbecue meal. They made up almost all of the 10 positive cases reported in the city on Sunday, after 7 people, all members of the same family, were confirmed late in the evening as having the infection. It was a 24-year-old member of the family, his grandmother, his mother and father, 2 aunts, and 3 cousins. Their ages ranged from 22 to 68. So there were 10 new cases in Hong Kong. That the number of people in Hong Kong jumped by more than a third to 36, heightening fears of a community outbreak. Now, Hong Kong is part of China. It's not mainland China, however. The development came as health authorities warned of major difficulties in tracing possible virus carriers because some might only show mild flu-like symptoms at an early stage. So, we've heard this kind of report again and again and again, that not everyone with this has the same symptoms. We were reading a medical study, I think, yesterday, talking about how in that medical study, I think it was of 138 patients, like about 10% of them had atypical symptoms. We were reading this medical study talking about how We were reading about this. Where were we reading about it? Oh, this was the Journal of American Medical Association, a medical paper in JAMA, talking about actual cases in Wuhan. And it talked about how one person had the virus but didn't have the normal symptoms. They actually had abdominal symptoms like nausea, stomach problems. And they went to a hospital in Wuhan and they didn't think the person had the virus, so they didn't take protective precautions. And then this one person gave it to 10 healthcare providers and I believe 4 other patients in the hospital. So there's a bunch of evidence that not everyone with this has the same symptoms, and some people have different symptoms and not the typical symptoms. So that means you could have people running around out there who aren't diagnosed with this but are sick and giving it to other people, and they're not being quarantined. Also, there's been a lot of evidence pointing to people being able to give this to other people before they show symptoms. There was a Japanese study that recently came out that we mentioned yesterday. That Japanese study claimed that roughly half of infections come from when somebody is before they're showing symptoms. So, who knows how many people are in China and elsewhere, and especially in China, though, who have this virus and aren't showing symptoms, or are showing different than typical symptoms, or are just showing mild symptoms. And maybe these people haven't even gone to get tested yet, or maybe they've gone to the hospital and they said, oh, you don't have this virus because you're not showing the obvious symptoms. And they could be running around spreading it to other people. And so again, this case, though, it certainly looks like in certain instances this spreads really readily. 9 members of the same family confirmed with disease in Hong Kong after sharing hot pot and barbecue meal. 9 people in the same family. And it says 9 of the new cases had been to a family gathering on January 19th at the Lento Party Room in Kwantong. 19 people had joined the dinner, including 2 relatives from mainland China who left the city at the end of last month. Our viewer Pedro, by the way, says, no cases in Brazil, really suspect. Well, there's been no official cases in South America. No official cases in Africa, no official cases in Indonesia. A lot of experts think that there actually are cases in some or all of these places. We've talked about this before. There's reporting suggesting that Indonesia and Africa could lack the ability to properly test for this, or the medical, that some parts of Africa could lack, the medical infrastructure to be detecting these cases, not just testing for them, but to actually look out for these cases and make sure people get tested who have it. Also, for all we know, a country like Indonesia that's closely tied to China, maybe they don't want to upset China by reporting cases. Maybe Indonesia doesn't want bad publicity and bad economic consequences from reporting cases. Cambodia is another place that a number of scientists believe should be showing more cases, but is not. So maybe there are more cases in a lot of these places.
In a matter of days, Dr. Li Wenliang went from treating patients to becoming one. The 34-year-old ophthalmologist diagnosed Saturday with the Wuhan coronavirus. But if action had been taken when he and others started sounding alarms, the severity of the outbreak might have been understood sooner. Struggling to communicate, Li spoke with CNN briefly by phone. You can hear the hospital machines pulsing in the background. It was back in late December when Li first warned friends on WeChat about a SARS-like disease going around. Li sent a group message saying that a test result from a patient quarantined at the hospital where he worked showed a patient had a coronavirus. But hours after hitting send, Wuhan city health officials tracked Li down, questioning where he got the information. Within days, they closed the suspected source of the virus, this seafood market. and they announced the outbreak. But instead of being praised, Li got a call from Wuhan City Police. With Li coughing too much and breathing too poorly to speak by phone, we asked Li by text, "How did you feel when this happened?" "I felt a little afraid I would be detained, afraid my family would worry," Li responded. He agreed to sign this document, admitting to spreading rumors online and severely disrupting social order. It reads, "We want you to cooperate with the police and listen to our reminder and stop the illegal act. Can you do that?" Li answered, "Yes, I can." In the weeks that followed, the Wuhan Municipal Health Commission maintained that there was no obvious evidence for human-to-human transmission, no infection of healthcare workers, and that the outbreak was, in their words, preventable and controllable. And with that, the people of Wuhan continued about their normal lives. Then came a sudden jump in infections. China's central government took over, scrambling to contain a spreading virus with a rising death toll. Chinese state media first reported that Li was one of several whistleblowers silenced by police. Calls for Li and the others to be vindicated grew online. China's Supreme Court even weighed in, adding, quote, "It might have been a fortunate thing if the public had listened to this rumor at the time." But for many, including Li and his parents, it was too late. They all contracted the coronavirus. Li is now fighting for his life, alone in quarantine, but online, considered a hero. Tens of thousands praising his attempts to sound the alarm, ahead of what's become a global health emergency. After the Chinese Supreme Court made those comments in support of Li and the other whistleblowers, we did hear from Wuhan police. They released a statement essentially saying, look, the whistleblowers weren't fined and they weren't detained. They were simply questioned and let go. Now, we did also reach out, CNN did, to Wuhan police as well as the local health commission. Allison, they declined to comment.
Just haven't been detected.
In a matter of days.
We don't know. So that was concerning, the whole 9 people in Hong Kong. That just came out overnight. Thanks, by the way. I want to say a quick thank you to, Marilyn Starbuck, who recommended a video. Yeah, and Marilyn mentions crematoriums. That's one of these things where I see some stuff online about crematoriums, and all I have to say is I just have no idea. I mean, I can't give you a good analysis of that, or I can't really weigh in intelligently because the stuff I see online is anecdotal. There's really no solid evidence about crematorium activity being higher and that kind of. I mean, there's some stories here and there, but it's just so hard to say. So who knows? Would I be surprised if more people are dying than China says? Oh, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think it's probably the case. Would I be surprised if it turned out that bodies were being burned? No, I wouldn't be surprised. Would I be surprised if that's not happening? No, I wouldn't be surprised by that either. So it's just so hard to say. Even in normal times with China, it can be hard to figure out what's going on there. The media is not an open media. It's controlled by the government. Social media is censored by the government. But these days, when a crisis is going on, it's very hard to tell what's going on there. And at a certain point, you just can't tell what's going on there. So I just don't know. I really have nothing to add to that other than we just don't know. But anyways, thank you so much, Marilyn Starbuck, for your support. I really appreciate it, Marilyn Starbuck. Thank you also to Gunslinger 67 from your support. Now, Gunslinger says the real fallout from this will be the slowdown stop of manufacturing and shipping. So I do think, we're going to see, because we're hearing about lots of people still not working in China. I think we're going to see increased effects, like Gunslinger does, on the world economy, as Gunslinger mentions, on Chinese components of various things people make around the world. So I will be watching to see what comes out about that. Thank you, Gunslinger67. Thank you also, C. Riley, for your support. Thank you, C. Clary, for your support. Thank you, Leon Pick. Thank you also to Seth Ainsley for your support. Seth points out how deaths have passed those from SARS. Thank you also, D17 Tom, for your support. And Tom talks about the comparing the flu and the death rates between the flu and this coronavirus. And look, it's not really clear what the death rate is for this coronavirus yet. There's all kinds of unknowns, but it certainly looks like the death rate for this would be significantly higher than for the flu. The kind of flu viruses that would go around, and that probably hundreds of millions, at least tens of millions of Americans would get it each year, correct?
KM ingin melaporkan pertambahan satu kes baru 2019 novel coronavirus yang dilaporkan oleh Pusat Kesiapsiagaan dan Respons Center kami CPRC, menjadikan seluruhnya kes positif coronavirus adalah 15 sehingga kini. Pribadi ini adalah seorang pelancong warga negara China, wanita, berusia 59 tahun dari Wuhan, China. Tiba bersama-sama dengan suami, anak lelaki dan menantunya di Singapura pada 17 Januari 2020. Mereka kemudiannya ke Johor Bahru pada 21 Januari 2020. Beliau memaklumkan berada di tempat penginapan. Pada kebanyakan waktunya beliau berada di tempat penginapan beliau. Beliau mula mengalami gejala demam pada 26 Januari dan hanya mengambil ubat demam yang dibeli oleh anaknya dari farmasi berhampiran tempat penginapannya. Beliau dijadualkan pulang ke China pada 4 Februari 2020 dengan menaiki penerbangan dari Johor Bahru ke Guangzhou, tetapi telah menangguhkannya kerana kurang sihat. Itu jalan ceritanya. Untuk pengetahuan semua, anak lelaki dan menantunya telah pun pulang ke China pada tarikh 4 Februari itu. Pada 5 Februari, beliau masih lagi tidak sihat. Pihak pejabat kesihatan daerah ataupun PKD Johor Bahru, JB, telah menerima pemakluman dari pengurusan tempat penginapannya pada hari yang sama dan beliau telah dirujuk ke hospital bagi menerima rawatan selanjutnya.
So the death rate, whatever it is, would be more than, it looks like it's more than the typical flu someone might get. Thank you also, Paula McLennan, and thank you to, I think I thanked everybody there. Also, Leon Pick talked about a new official name. I saw something about a new name for this, but it didn't really seem more descriptive. The name was originally novel coronavirus, which just means new coronavirus. So it just says Wuhan coronavirus gets new official name. China's Health Commission is calling it novel coronavirus pneumonia, which I don't even understand because it's not a pneumonia, it's a virus. This sounds like the name of a disease. That sounds like the name of a disease, not the name of a coronavirus. So I don't really understand that official name. And thank you, January, for your support. Thank you, January. Also, let me thank our moderators. Our moderators have been doing amazing work. They're all volunteers. Thank you, Joanna, who's in our chat room right now, Barbara Smith, Becky Scarlett. They're all there. Danny James. And also thank you to, hang on one second here.